Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Swasthya Setu. Today, we will be talking about Omicron. As we all know, this is a new buzzword among the medical fraternity right now. So there are many questions, queries in the mind of doctors. To deal with them effectively with knowledge and what are the latest updates happening across the globe, we have got a very learned speaker, Dr. Rajeev Jayadevan, with us from Cochin. Welcome, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Dr. Rajeev Jayadevan, those who are social media buffs must be knowing and must be following him. So, sir is a senior consultant gastroenterologist in Cochin and former president of IMA Cochin. Sir is a popular speaker on various news channels and various platforms across India, including leading news channels of India. Sir is currently the member of National COVID Task Force of IMA for COVID and currently the vice chairman of Kerala IMA Epidemic Control Cell. And Kerala was in news for various reasons. So sir was quite instrumental in managing things there. And on his Twitter account, we find that is not usual to find a lot of influencing doctors on social media, but sir is a definite an exception. His Twitter account is a reach shows of, I can say around more than 8,000 latest scientific development articles across world, which sir normally curates and posts it on his Twitter channel. So with this brief introduction, I will invite the learned speaker, Dr. Rajeev Jayadevan, for his talk on Omicron. Thank you and welcome, sir. All yours now.
Thank you, Dr. Pranesh, and good evening, doctors and all other viewers who are with us. So the session will run for approximately 25 minutes. So I will give you an introduction because this is primarily a session for doctors. So I'll be talking in technical language to a considerable extent. And in the first few minutes, I'll introduce a few basic concepts on immunology, because it's with those concepts that we can move forward and tackle issues relating to Omicron. Okay, so we know that the virus, no matter what the name we call it, Delta, Alpha, Beta, Omicron, they're all the same virus. Essentially, they are the same virus. And if you look at a large, let's say large mango tree, the mango tree grows in various directions and multiple branches keep branching out. And as the tree gets older, more and more branches form. And the virus genomic epidemiology works like that. And some branches go and develop more and more branches, other branches die out. And if you see the genomic epidemiology of SARS-CoV-2, it works like that. So this particular Omicron virus grew out of a faraway branch. It is not a sub-branch, or it is not the grandson of Delta or the granddaughter of Beta. It is not. So this variant came out of the blue, and like other variants did, the Delta variant, we don't know where it came from. It was identified in India. We don't know where Omicron came from. It may have come from any country. It was just identified there. And the same thing with Beta, with the Alpha variant. Now we know Alpha variant, exactly a year ago, Britain was struggling with it. And then it spread to the rest of the world around the turn of the year. So the same thing is happening with Omicron. And now a picture is emerging. In the last 2 years, we are seeing multiple waves coming in the same community. And even though the US and Europe are dominating the so-called academic circuit, if you see my Twitter, it's very well balanced. I basically search for good science updates and anecdotes from around the world. And I'll draw your attention to a study from Iran from a few months ago that showed that the same regions continuously kept getting reinfected. So reinfections in an area are not rare. All right, so I'll also point out just one more thing before I start the immunology part, that when the pandemic started, there were plenty of narratives that went wrong. The first thing that was wrong was they called it herd immunity, and they said that if you vaccinate a particular percentage, you can stop the pandemic. That's wrong. Coronavirus does not lend itself for herd immunity. Herd immunity works for sterilizing immunity-causing viruses like measles and polio. Because in other words, in a class of 100, if you vaccinate 90 people, the 10 will be protected. But that does not hold true for SARS-CoV-2 virus. The second narrative that we went wrong was especially Western nations, carried the narrative that if you vaccinate enough people, you can eradicate the virus. You can vaccinate the way out of the pandemic. That's impossible. It is not possible to vaccinate your way out of the pandemic. The only way to stop the pandemic is old-fashioned, established public health measures, which is like sitting on a chair with 4 legs. The one leg is masks, especially while we are indoors with other people. Second leg is restricting indoor gatherings because this virus almost exclusively spreads indoors. And the third leg is indoor ventilation, improving air exchange rates of all indoor spaces. And little has been done in that regard, particularly in our country. And fourth is vaccination, a minimum of 2 doses. And if a person is prior infected, at least 1 dose to boost the natural immunity. So that is a summary of what we should do in the long run. And now I'll take you through some very interesting bits of immunology. I'm going to turn my video off.
Yes, sir.
All right. So I'm going to share my screen.
Yes.
Okay. Let me know if you can see a whiteboard. Can you see the whiteboard?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So let's just start something here. Imagine we have a virus that is coming to infect our cell. Let's say this is the cell. Let's say this is a cell. And now we're going to have a virus. Now, virus looks like this. And we've got the spike protein and the tips of the virus. The virus has to attach to what is called the ACE2 receptor. And everybody, even a school child, knows what an ACE receptor is. So obviously, the red part of the virus binds the green part of the cell. And once it binds, the virus gains entry into the cell. What neutralizing antibodies do
Recording in progress.
They go and bind these spike protein epitopes, which means that they'll block off the spike protein, which means the virus is not able to enter the cell. So this is mechanism number 1, how the body controls the virus. Now, let's say we don't have enough neutralizing antibodies, the virus enters the cell. So here we have a cell, and the virus has gained entry into the cell. So here's a virus that is sitting inside the cell. And now let's imagine, or let's wonder what the body will do to get rid of the virus. Remember, this virus is actively multiplying. So there's plenty of viruses multiplying inside the cell. And each of these viruses, they look identical. What the cell does is the cell sends what is called a distress signal. And the distress signal is placed on a molecule which is called the MHC1 molecule, the major histocompatibility complex 1. Remember, the virus is actively multiplying. So these particles that the virus is making, the body transports these particles and puts them on top of the MHC1 molecule. So when that happens, we have the policemen of the body, which are the immune cells, let's say the CD8 or the cytotoxic cells. They have receptors that will recognize this part. Once a CD8 T cell, which already recognized the virus, picks it up, what it will do is it will just destroy this cell completely. You see, the cell just vanished. You see that? So the cell just vanished. This CD8 T cell will destroy the infection control cell along with its contents. So it's like bombing a building where a lot of bad people are sitting. So the building is bombed and the people are killed. So that is essentially how the body counters viral infections. Now, along with CD8, the other cells also get activated, which are basically called B cells. And B cells are promoted by what is called CD4 cells, which are the other type of T cells, and we call them helper cells, T helper cells. Now, T helper cells will boost these B cells, and these B cells will fire multiple tens of thousands of antibodies like this into the blood. And these antibodies will circulate all around the body, and it looks for the virus. And as soon as they find the virus, they will neutralize or destroy the virus. And large cells like this. Now, these are called macrophages. You'll remember this from your immunology days. these macrophages, they come and engulf this virus. They swallow this virus. So the immunology of the virus infection is actually a very long process. Now let me take you through the body, how the virus actually infects the body. Let's say this is the body. All right. So this is somebody's face, ears. Now I'm going to draw the inside. Here's a nose, and this is the nasal cavity. It goes to the throat, and here's the oral cavity. Now this is lined by, I've drawn it in green, and this is called mucus. And in mucus, if I draw it big like this, below the mucus are our cells. Our cells look like this under the mucus. So these are our cells that are located under the mucus. And in the mucus, our body has what is called IgA antibodies. Now these are called IgA antibodies. And these IgA antibodies also exist inside the cell. They are dimers, which means they look like a bone, like this. Two molecules combined. So what they do is they kill off any virus that comes along. They will bind to the virus and kill the virus. So if a virus comes and lands in our mucus through the nose, like this, it flies in through the nose, the IgA will go and kill the virus. So IgA is a fundamental part of our immune response, and which is part of a mucosal system. IgA also works underneath the epithelium. So IgA also is located here. Now, unfortunately, the present-day vaccines do not generate a good IgA response. The reason is these vaccines are given intramuscularly. When they're given intramuscularly, the immunity is generated in the lymph node and it protects the internal organs. Whereas a natural infection will cause a war that happens here. And when a war happens here, the mucosal immunity is superior from natural infection. So which is why the latest papers have shown that if you give 1 dose of vaccine to someone who had natural infection or 2 doses of vaccine, you get the best mucosal immunity. The reason why reinfections are happening or breakthrough infections are happening is because this mucosal immunity, or what we call the mucosal immunity, is poor for SARS-CoV-2 virus. And these are 2 fundamental aspects we need to discuss before we go on to the Omicron variant. Now let's look at Omicron variant. So if you have the virus, as I showed you earlier, it's got a spike protein, and it is the tip of the spike protein, which is called the receptor binding domain. And at the tip of the receptor binding domain, this is called the RBM, or the receptor binding motif. This is like the tip of a nib of if this is a fountain pen, let's say, let me draw a fountain pen. Fountain pen, the tip looks like this, the nib looks like this. See, the nib looks like that. And the tip of the nib is, in fact, the receptor binding motif, MOTIF, RB motif. Now, this area is the exact area like we use the tip of the nib to write a letter. Likewise, the virus uses the tip of the spike protein to bind to the cells. So this also happens to be where the antibodies come and bind. These are the antibodies. Now, the virus is continuously trying to change its receptor binding motif, and most of the mutations in the Omicron variant happen to occur at the receptor binding motif, which means that some of these antibodies are no longer working, which means that the neutralization process that prevents the virus from entering the cell is defective, which means that the virus is able to enter the cells faster than ever before. So this is the virus. There aren't enough neutralizing antibodies. See that? The antibodies are not working anymore. They're not able to attach properly, and therefore the virus gains entry. But all is not lost. As soon as the virus gains entry, the cell will take care of it, and our cell-mediated immunity will come and just destroy the cell the moment it is detected. And our cell-mediated immunity, which is basically by T cells and B cells, they have such a large, what is called a library of cells. And this library is made of memory cells. Now, these memory cells will last a lifetime. And that is the reason why vaccination protects for a very long time. So I just wanted to highlight the difference between what they call neutralization titers. So the neutralization titer is basically what happens outside the cell, and cell-mediated immunity is what happens when the virus gets inside the cell. So the cell-mediated immunity will destroy the cells. The neutralizing antibodies will prevent the virus from entering the cell. I hope the difference is clear. Now, some very interesting aspects of pandemic. the first and the most important, as we are all general practitioners, we are all doctors, spend some time explaining this diagram here. See, this is by a doctor called Dr. Duncan Robertson in England, and the annotations are mine. So I'll take you through the annotations. What I've actually done is, if you see this one,
yes, fine.
Can you see the central? Can you see the central bar?
Yes.
This central bar is divided in different colors. You see the different colors. Now, this color is 90 plus. This green is 85 to 89. Can you see that? And then as we come down, the yellow is here. All right. So my point is, you see the red bar here?
Yeah.
Yeah. The red bar represents all the age group from 0 to 45. And that is represented here. Can you see that tiny little bar there? Okay.
Yes.
Now let's look at India now. So this means that in India, at least from Kerala statistics, I can tell you 96% of deaths occur over the age of 40. And you know, in India, more over 40, the percentage of people over 40 is only 25%. In other words, 96% of the deaths in India or across the world are coming from 25% of the population, which means also the corollary is also true. 4% of the deaths are coming from 75% of the population. So when we target the vaccination and other campaigns, we must focus on where we can prevent the most deaths. And that is primarily this segment. That is the more than 40-year-old segment. And the higher we go in the age, the more we can save lives. So the more vaccines we deliver, or the more people we can deliver the vaccine in this direction. Whereas if we go in the wrong direction, we will be using a lot of vaccine doses, but preventing far fewer deaths. I hope that picture is clear. So that is the most important message I want to give out to all the doctors here. And now let me take you through what is called boosters. Now, this diagram I created just to explain how boosters work. Now, to the left is the red, let me annotate this. It'll be easier if I draw it for you. So over here is unvaccinated person. The blue dots represent the number of infections. The red dots here, they represent the severe cases. Now, if the person is 2-dose vaccinated, the total number of infection is less. And in the total number of infections, the number of severe cases also is smaller. That's because we've got total number of infections is reduced by what I showed you was mucosal immunity to some extent and neutralizing antibodies. And the total number of deaths is decreased primarily by cell-mediated immunity or T-cell immunity. I hope this makes sense now. Now, when you boost someone, when you give a third dose, what you're essentially doing is you're strengthening the neutralizing antibody segment because these antibodies don't last for more than a few months after any shot. So what we are doing with the boosters, you're reducing the number of infections, but the proportion of people who go on to develop severe disease over here, I'll draw it in blue, remains the same. So there is no change in the proportion of people that go from active infection to severe disease when you give a booster. So you would want to give a booster to someone who's very vulnerable because they can't afford to get a breakthrough infection, and someone who's in a high-risk category. Now, high-risk category is a very long list. For example, healthcare workers are high risk because they are constantly exposed to the virus. And then we've got immunosuppressed people who are also high risk because their immune systems are not very good. And then you got people with certain comorbidities, which I can't go into. So this is what I call a targeted booster dosing. So that's again a little bit of concept about boosters. And this is a cartoon that I created again to explain immunology. See, the top. All right. The top one is over here. This is after the second dose of vaccine. Basically, immunology is a tale of two walls. The first wall is made of neutralizing antibodies. The second wall is made of T cells. When a person is freshly vaccinated, let's say a person has completed 2 doses 2 weeks ago, Both the walls are in great shape. Okay, and this first wall is made of neutralizing antibodies. You can see the virus coming and getting zapped and getting killed instantly by the neutralizing antibody. The second wall is made of T cells that is protecting the organs. So this person is fully protected. There is no infection and there is no organ damage. Now, after about 6 or 8 months, this neutralizing antibody, as you very well know, will drop in size. The neutralizing antibodies naturally will drop in number. So the virus is able to leap past in a few instances. And it causes infection in the nose and throat and a little bit of the bronchi, bit of cough. But the second wall, it stops them from getting organ damage. So the virus is not able to go past. Now, in a person who is unvaccinated, not only does the virus go inside with no difficulty, the second wall is being constructed as the virus infection is happening. In younger people, they can quickly build this wall into a very tall structure. So a young person can build a wall which is very tall, like this. Like this. Whereas an older person, the construction process is not very good. So that is why some of these people, especially in the older segment, go on to get what is called organ damage. So in other words, if you take a child, let's say take a person who's less than 18, it's almost impossible for that person to die. For instance, in Kerala, the number of children who die is 1 in 70,000 infections, which is less than 0.001%, which is zero. Basically, it is zero. And that's the reason. The reason is, one, they have a good innate immunity. They've got a good instant response to the virus. And they also have a good adaptive immunity, which means that as soon as the virus gets in, their immune system kicks in and gets rid of the virus really fast. So that is, again, a very, very important diagram. Again, which I showed you earlier, a larger picture that I showed you. On the left is unvaccinated. On the right is vaccinated people. So, so let's come back. I'm going to turn the screen sharing off. Yeah, with all that immunology, what we have now is updates from South Africa as of today. The National Institute of Communicable Diseases has released a statement saying that the Omicron wave is milder than they expected, and the hospitalization rates are officially smaller. Remember when the news broke 3 weeks ago, many of us were not sure because the information was just trickling in bits and pieces. Now we have an official statement from the NICD, which is like, it's like ICMR for India or the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare for India. So they made an official statement in the news. I was listening to South African News Network. They made a statement that it is milder. And I'll also add that South Africa has lost over $1 billion of their local currency simply because of this travel ban. So this country has suffered great economic consequences simply because they were diligent to warn the world about a problem that they detected. It is not that they created, they detected a problem. They said they warned the world, but the world was cruel towards them. It was unfair, uncalled for, completely unscientific travel ban instituted, especially by some Western nations, not by our country, but by some Western nations. And now some of that is being revised. Now, Omicron has, the warning was correct. It has traveled all around the world. Several countries have reported it. In India, we don't have a great amount of information about how much it has spread. We know from the news network that the people are testing people who are traveling on. So people who are traveling are being tested and their contacts. So our information is skewed in that direction. Just because those people are testing positive, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist in our country. We will know the true picture of Omicron only in a few, let's say, months in India, because genomic sequencing has to be done in large numbers in representative population for us to really find out how it is doing here. Now, the biggest concern is whether it will escape vaccines. it will definitely escape the first layer of vaccine protection, that is protection from infection. There's no doubt about that. It's not just Omicron. Delta also could walk over the first fence. Remember, I showed you the two walls. The first wall was the neutralizing antibody, and the second wall is T cell immunity. Delta could literally walk over the first wall. And we knew that. How do we know that? The earliest reports of breakthrough infections in India came just 17 days after the second dose was given. All right. So let's make it a month. Within the first month itself, we started seeing breakthrough infections in India. And that was the alpha variant. And then came the Delta variant, which had even more immune escape capabilities. So breakthrough infections are very common in India. But we don't hear about most of them because many of them are asymptomatic or very mild. The good news for India is both the vaccines that we have used in 2 doses are giving robust protection. Our own calculation from our own data from our country show that the chance of a person who is vaccinated to die is 17 times lower than an unvaccinated person. In terms of infection, even though breakthrough infections are there, our vaccines are still preventing infections by a factor of 10, which means that the difference in infection rate between unvaccinated and vaccinated people in India at this time is 10 times, which is still very, very good protection. But we have some questions to be answered. We need to find out if any of the vaccinated individuals back in January are picking up bad cases of infection. I've been working very hard to look for any such data. As of 2 hours ago, no data has reached me, at least from doctors, from nurses, all of my network, all of my healthcare network. Nobody has given a signal that our immunity from the earliest vaccinations in India has decreased. Of course, breakthrough infections will continue to happen also with Omicron. Now, why do I think Omicron is not going to cause a threat to the individual? Because, as I showed you, the virus, if the virus is a pen, it's only the tip of the virus. See, the tip of the pen has a nib and the tip has a tiny tip. And it's only in that area that most of these changes, antigenic changes or mutations are happening. The immune system recognizes so many different parts of the virus. And even if there's a spike protein, the immune system has so many other parts to recognize that they are called epitopes. Now, epitopes, very briefly, if an antigen is a mango tree, epitope are the mangoes. Epitopes are the small amino acid fragments, say 4 to 17 in length, tiny fragments of the antigen that our immune cells can lock onto. They're like the barcode. Now, this virus has hundreds of barcodes, only a few of which get mutated. Now, the virus can't change all its barcodes because if the virus changes some critical barcodes or if it mutates too much, the virus will die. So, in other words, our immune system has the upper hand. It is not only smart in recognizing other parts of the virus, it's also continuously upgrading its detection skills. So, which is why, how do I know that? Because the vaccines that we produced based on the original virus held out very well against Delta. None of the people who were vaccinated had a bad outcome with Delta, of course, with the exception of some older people who did have bad outcomes, but those bad outcomes were far fewer than would have happened had they not been vaccinated. So that is a summary of what I believe about the Omicron. I'll stop by saying that in science, I respect something called the unknown. The thing about being scientific is being humble about what is not known. There's a lot that is not known, and we must never pretend that we know everything. That is one of my guiding principles. I thank you for listening.
Thank you, sir. I think we are not sure about the booster of vaccine, whether we will be getting or not, but definitely this was a good booster for our knowledge on immunology. And I must appreciate the excellent presentation and narration that you have done. But as you rightly said, sir, in Omicron, there are a lot of things, a lot of questions are still yet to be answered, and I think time will only tell. But as you said, we have to sit on a chair with 4 legs. So we have to take all the precautions and promote vaccination as much as we can in the target audience, as you have suggested, in the audience about 40 years of age, which are more vulnerable to the things. So I think that takes care of everything. Thank you very much, sir, for sparing your valuable time and joining us from your busy schedule. We'll keep following you on your social media handles and everything. If something comes up, we'll definitely call you again. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Pragnesh, and thank you for all who tuned in and listened. Thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you, viewers, for joining in large numbers. See you then. Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye, sir.